part of the guidelines that Jake and the team gave us for this segment was that we were to have a blend of younger generations and older, more seasoned leaders. And I just wanted to let you know that this was actually a challenge. And Justin sent me a message this morning, and I'll tell you why it was a challenge. It's a challenge because sometimes we don't know which category we fit in. I'm not sure whether you've experienced that as you've been chatting today, but sometimes I was like, oh, am I youth, young adult, or slightly beyond that? I'm not sure. So I want to let you know that this is something that we're grappling with live. These definitions have been given to us really so that we can frame our conversations clearly. So for the purpose of this weekend, a young adult is 18 to 29-year-old, okay? So that's what we're talking about when we're saying young adult. I would encourage you that everyone here can be young at heart, okay? All right. So I'm going to start with Alicia. Alicia, can you tell us what's the best part and the hardest part of being a young person today?
For me, I think in Australia, the best part is all the opportunities we're given, whether that be careers, schools, anything. I just feel like we have so much freedom to choose what we want, and also the availability of knowledge. It can obviously work for good or for bad, but it is so easy for us to be able to learn with just a quick Google search.
And you've just started that journey.
Yes, I just started university.
Yeah, awesome. So first week at uni doing?
Bachelor of Nursing and Pre-Medicine certificate.
Awesome. And what's the hardest part?
I think it's trying to be accepted into society when often as Christians we can't fit in and with all the social norms and expectations. And then because they don't align with God's word, and it's often hard when you know they don't, but you're still just trying to navigate your way into finding friends and fitting in and also sharing God's word with others.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for starting us off, Alicia. Justin, you and I both had birthdays this week. Do you know that? Yeah, I just found that out. Happy birthday to you too. Justin, same for you. What's the best part and the hardest part of being your age at the moment?
Yeah, cool. So before I do give my answer, I did appreciate in the video how they mentioned how 28 is the new 18. So I'm going to go with that.
Right there with you.
And stick with the youth title. So I wrote down a couple of notes because otherwise I'll get distracted and just ramble. But I suppose I'm going to start off with the negative I think there's a lot of distractions, you know. I think whether that be extracurricular kind of stuff where like sports or peer pressure or social media, like your phones are huge distractions, you know. And they're big things that are, getting people off topic a little bit. And I think that can also be a positive too, because I think it's an incredible resource that we could use that we're probably not tapping into as much as we are at the moment, you know. Something that being a young person, you know, we've got these resources that we can just go for.
Yeah, I really resonate with what you're saying. It's like everything's at the palm of our hands. At times that's awesome. At times it's overwhelming and it's hard to navigate. Yeah, totally resonate with what you're saying there. Gareth, how would you define your season at the moment? What phase of life are you in?
In my mind, I'm still 22 or 3.
Amen.
But it doesn't take too long a conversation with someone considerably younger than me to realise that that's actually not the case. Or attempting sport or stuff like that. But, you know, I've got young kids and I guess a bit into my career, I suppose. So it's just I don't know, in some ways I'd say almost a groundhog mundane phase of life, but at the same time it's a really exciting time of life. So there's, yeah, I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's good. So what are some of the best things about life in this phase at the moment for you?
I'd have to say probably my family at the moment. Yeah, that's really, really just the kids are at an awesome age, and you know I've got a great relationship with my wife, which is really cool. You know we've got a great church at Meriden, and you know really, really awesome church family there with a huge bunch of kids for our kids, and that's you know obviously why we're here, all of us. For me, the idea of keeping my kids in the church is sort of one of the most important things to me. Especially for me, I've got so many friends that I went through, you know, school and church and, you know, summer camps and things like that with that aren't in any way involved in church anymore, and that's a real tragedy.
Yeah. Is there any parents in the room that can identify with some of those things that Gareth's sharing? Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Gareth. Harry. Harry likes to be called H.
H.
H. H. Harry, what's the best thing about life for you at the moment? And what's one of the hardest things about life in this phase for you?
Okay, so one of the best things I think in our generation is that we've got the money. You know, the baby boomers have got the money. And so if we haven't got a lot of it, we've got control of it, and we've got access to it. We know how to access it. So I've just found the last 10 years, my last 10 years have been my best decade, you know, as far as that goes. Security, travel, really good job until it paid very well until I retired about 3 years ago. So that's, to me, that's, and actually being happy with my identity, being happy with my position in life, having successful kids, and of course grandchildren. So grandchildren are a really great reward. Forget the money, forget everything else, forget the kids, but the grandkids. The grandkids, you can have a great relationship with the grandkids.
That's a truth bomb right
it's
there.
It's hard having don't tell anyone, don't tell Grant I said this, but it's hard having a really good relationship with your son. But with his sons, you can have a great relationship. And with that, I've got 4 grandsons and 1 beautiful granddaughter. And that's the best thing about life, this is my stage in life. And the unfair things probably that I feel are unfair, there are certain things you've got to give up as you get older, particularly blokes, you know, and you just can't afford to walk past a toilet, for example, you know. You know, that can be embarrassing.
Vulnerability panel, people. Vulnerability panel. Thanks for sharing, Harry. Alicia, what do you think old people might assume about your generation that's unfair?
Well, I think a lot of the words that were thrown around before about us being lazy and entitled, I think that's a bit unfair. And I often think that we're a bit misunderstood with our work because it's different to what they perceive as hard work. So, for, just because we don't have to wash the dishes, we have a dishwasher or things like that. But a lot of us actually do work really hard in different ways to achieve whatever our goals may be. And school is a challenge. So I think we're a bit misunderstood in that way. And just like in any generation, there's always going to be people who feel entitled. And even though we might have a higher percentage possibly, I think it's unfair that we're all just perceived as being entitled when a lot of us are actually very grateful for all the blessings we've been given.
So stereotypes aren't cool.
No.
Yeah, got it. Justin, what does it look like for an older adult to understand you and support you?
Okay, I think something super important is just creating a relationship, you know, spending some quality time with someone. I think if you want to give the keys to somebody, you know, that isn't just we're going to get them when they're just about ready to leave the church or like heading out the back door or something, you know, like it's a lifelong journey, you know, like church is a family and it should be like that. And I think that is something that I want to see more of in the church as a whole. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's awesome. Alicia, you recently got baptised, didn't you? Yeah. How long ago was that?
2 weekends
2
ago, I think.
weekends ago.
Yeah.
Awesome. What was that like for you? Yeah, give her a round of applause. Super exciting. What was it like for you to have your whole church turn up and support you with that? How did that feel?
Amazing. Yeah. And I think as a young person, just knowing there's people old and young looking out for you, there's nothing that can beat that. And especially when it's not family, because family is great, but sometimes there might be things you don't feel like sharing. So having those other people that are there for you for different aspects of your life is just amazing.
Did you have people in your journey up to the point where you decided to get baptised that you felt listened to and supported you in that journey?
Absolutely. And you guys were talking about mentors before, and I've had Amy and Lucy, a different Lucy, as my mentor. And that's just so amazing that you always know you have someone to lean on in those times of spiritual turmoil, or you're just struggling on how to take the next step. So if I didn't have those people in my church supporting me, then it would be easy just to go, oh, it's a little bit too hard, I'm not going to bother, sort of thing.
Yeah, awesome. Gareth, I believe that you've met Alicia and Justin before. Where have you come across these young people before?
I've got a daughter who's 4 years old, and Alicia's the most amazing person in the world to her. She's absolutely thinks that the sun shines out of Alicia. So we've been on a couple of trips. We've been out bush with a fairly big crew a few times, and yeah, they my little Madison adores Alicia. So we've spent a bit of time out in the middle of nowhere. So that's been really cool. I think Justin was actually shorter than me at one stage. And that was, I think, maybe primary Sabbath school or something like that, where I was one of the assistants in there.
In teen Sabbath school, or
quite possibly, yeah. Yeah. So
I think it was the cradle roll. I was a bit taller than you.
Ouch. No, all good. Yeah. And another thing about Justin as well is one of the guys that I remember from Livingston that was really, really, I think a really important person that played an important role was probably his dad, with him being probably one of the most welcoming people that you'll ever encounter at a church anywhere. And, that's really memorable to me as well. So, yeah. So, yep.
Yeah, that's cool. How important it is for you to try and reach out to people that are younger than you? Why do you think that's an important part of your life?
I guess a part of it is probably what so many people did for me. When I was growing up, I had a good circle of people around me that, they were by no means perfect, and they were just doing their own thing, but a lot of them were sort of guys that were maybe 4 or 5 years older than me or something like that, and there was a few that were a fair bit older than that again, but how important they were in my life at different stages, I sort of feel as though I'm where I am and who I am largely because of that, and I just really think that it's something I want to be able to help other people get to a good place spiritually and all of that. If I can sort of find the opportunities and create the opportunities to do that.
Yeah, awesome. Harry, you've been involved in some mentoring programs at Carmel Church. I think it was the I Choose program and the I Follow program. Is there anything that you learnt about yourself when you were in that role of mentoring young people?
What I realised was that I was welcome there. I first rolled up and felt a bit out of place. Wasn't sure what I was supposed to do there. It was Terry's idea, and I thank him for it because it has expanded my horizons and realising that I do have a role there with the younger kids. Because I choose is only 12 to 15 years old. So in a way they're easier to get on with than the older youth, because I think the younger ones are more used to having a parentish guy around. The other thing, one thing I've kind of set myself up in that situation is what I call the respect police, because I find these kids, they have no respect, not just for Terry when he's talking to them or adults, but for one another. They just interrupt and push each other around and don't allow the person that's got the floor to have the floor. So I find that suddenly I got very interested in respect. And I get this from working in men's circles, how important it is to have respect and confidentiality and all that sort of thing. So that's overflowed into that work that I do with the kids as well.
And there's a tension in that space too, isn't there? So when you're creating, a space for young people to come and hang out and have fun, but to also be able to create times when you can transition into a quieter time, a time to sit and learn, and just how to navigate that can be a challenge. Sometimes young people have shorter attention spans, they're active and have so much energy, and it can be a bit of a tension to navigate that space.
I think getting involved physically, we usually have some games and that beforehand, so actually getting involved and running around and falling over and hurting myself and stuff like that, that's hard work. That is hard work, but I think that does give you a bit of a leg in with them when you get inside and start talking about stuff.
Awesome. Just heading towards our final couple of questions now. Alicia, what do you think are some of the biggest hurdles for your church, if you want to talk about your own local church or about our church generally?
Good question. I think meeting the youth where they're at, because there's a lot of us that are all on different journeys with God. Some of us feel really close to him, some of us not so much, and obviously that fluctuates as your life goes on. But I think it's important that we focus on providing a space that addresses all people and encourages us to work with each other. So I think that's one of the hurdles we're facing, is just trying to include everyone in their different journeys and how much they want to be involved, how much they don't want to be involved, just navigating that.
Yeah, awesome. How about you, Justin? What do you think's the biggest challenge or hurdle for our church at the moment?
Yeah, obviously I've been really lucky to go to Livingston, and they've been able to support me a lot there through the roles and the ministry that I've been doing there. But something as I suppose the church as a whole, I kind of touched on it a little bit last night in the 15 seconds that I had, was breaking down that stigma, I think what it looks like is the church is sometimes run a lot like a business, and there's a lot of politics and stuff involved in the background. And I think a lot of young people might be seeing the church as a bit of a place where they might be worried to make a mistake. I'm not perfect enough to be at church, or there's rules. They're not really rules, but we look at them that way. And unfortunately, that does put a bit of a sour taste and might make people want to leave. I think that's a pretty big hurdle, and I think we need to remember to focus on Jesus, and remember how Jesus taught, and just keep that as a foundation, I think, I think, break down that stigma, super important.
Awesome. I like how you suggest that looking to Jesus is a really big step in overcoming that hurdle as well. I think you're right there. Gareth, how do you think young people like Alicia, like Justin, can be a part of overcoming some of the challenges that our church is facing?
It's a tough question. I think my answer would be that the best way to overcome the challenges that our church faces is for everyone to have their own relationship with God and to build on that every day of their lives. Because if everyone in our church did that, I don't think we'd have half of the problems that we have. I guess that's probably my role, and as someone that's a little bit older than some of these guys, to encourage that where I can and demonstrate that in any way that I can as well. And just for younger people to understand that that your relationship with Jesus is the most important thing in your life and in your church life and in anything, and that you're going to make mistakes, sort of like Justin was talking about. You're going to get things wrong. We all do, but that's not what defines you. Loving Jesus and accepting his gift of grace is what defines you. And if you can understand that, it takes all of the pressure off the behavioural side of things that we so often have focused on, and that becomes a response rather than a driver.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Harry, just in closing, what would you say to encourage young people about why it's so important to have them as part of our church community?
Well, they're the future. That's the thing. They're the future of the church, so we need them. We'd very quickly die out as a church if those young people are not there. Very important. And I'd just like to add to what Gareth was saying. We've just got to learn to love one another, in the church. We need more hugging. We need more loving. We need less of this falling out. What's this falling out happening? Where's so-and-so? Oh, he's fallen out with so-and-so. We don't need that. That's terrible. But we allow that to happen. I allow that to happen. The way to stop that is to just love, isn't it? Love's the answer.
Awesome. Thank you, Harry. I think that's a really awesome place to wrap up. I'm so glad that each of you joined us, and thank you so much for being real, taking time to reflect, and also to be vulnerable in front of your wider church family. So will you just join me in thanking these guys for being a part of this morning? Thank you. You can sit down now. Just leave the mic on the chair. Thank you. Awesome. I'm now going to invite some friendly faces from around the room to join me on the panel. I'm going to invite Kyle Richardson, Paroshka, Susanna, Niku and Willie. If you'd like to join me up here, that would be super. So this group of people, just as they're coming to the stage, this is our WA conference departmental team, or at least a significant portion of them. And what I wanted to do was just make sure that you know who they are. So they're up here, and each one of them, I'm just going to ask them a couple of short questions, and they just have something to share with you to encourage you. Some of them have got a resource, some of them have got an idea. And so I would also like to let you know that these people have made themselves available during the weekend for as much as they are able. And they are able for you to invite them to your table to be a part of your discussion. If you would like to pick their brain, if you would like to raid their resource cupboard, please come and chat to them and invite them to your table if you would like. So Paroshka, you are a local church pastor at North Perth Church, and you are also Family Ministries Director here at WA Conference. Can you give us a quick run through of family worship time, and then we're going to talk a little bit about how churches can encourage families?
Thank you, Lucy. So first of all, to understand it, or probably put away with a myth, is that when we think about families, we think about a mum and a dad and 2 or 3 children. However, families come in many other shapes and forms. We have blended families, we have step families, we have single parents, we have seniors or young families, couples without children. They are all families. So how they do family worship is different within each of these groups, and even within the group. So it's very diverse. That's what I would like to start with. Second of all is running a program on how to do family worship is not going to change much. It's not about running programs, it's about developing people and developing families. I left a green packet on your table for each of your groups. There's a research in it I came across too, and it's in our division, GC-wide research, only 1/3 of our members attending church have regular family worship time. 1/3. So we need a culture change, and it won't happen overnight. So I left a lot of resources, and everything on white paper, I want to stress that one, Seventh-day Adventist material. Anything on blue paper is from another Christian source, so please filter it, but don't throw out the baby with the water. There are 12-week workshops, there are a lot of materials. So if you are interested in doing anything in this sphere in your church, please come and talk to me. I can't do it for you, but I will coach you through it. But you need a group of dedicated people.
Wonderful, thank you for sharing. And Paroshka has some additional marriage support resources that will be available too.
Yeah, if you are interested, I've got enough for 5 churches, complete packages. I need 2 people from your churches, preferably husband and wife, but it can be 2 other people who will commit to it, and it can be run for different age groups, different marriage season time. Just one more, Lucy, that I believe we are not even doing well in being reacting to the problems in marriages, let alone being proactive with our young people. So there's a lot of room to grow. I've got a lot of resources and happy to resource you and to coach you through it.
Awesome. Thank you, Paroshka. Come and see Paroshka if, particularly in your discussion times, you're thinking about families and marriages and developing those and supporting those in your church. Kyle is also a local church pastor at Gosnells, and Kyle is also our children's ministry director. Kyle, can you tell us some ideas for meaningful ways for churches to involve children, knowing how important it is that children often make decisions to follow Jesus from an early age, and how we can support them?
Yeah, thanks for that, Lucy. Children's ministries, and I guess with children, anything that an adult can do, a child can do almost. There are a few exceptions to that rule. But when it comes to church and worship and the things that you do on a week-to-week basis, the children in your congregations are actually capable of far more than you probably realise. One of the greatest evangelists I've met in this conference is actually a 10-year-old girl who invited her whole class to come to an outreach, and half of them showed up, which is amazing. Like 15 of her friends showed up. So there are resources for to get children involved in preaching, to get them involved in doing anything else that takes place on your Sabbath services or outside of that. I also like to encourage churches to think not only about children doing things that adults do, but handing over responsibility to children to actually lead areas as well, and go, hey, what if the children actually pick songs that they like as well, rather than just sing the songs that the adults like, and the adults actually sing the songs with the children rather than just watching the children do it. So there's a number of varieties of ways that can happen. There's also a couple of initiatives, one that's coming out soon from the AUC called Next Generation Ministers, which is not about pastors, but is about getting young people, primary and junior aged, to be involved in ministry and to be preaching and to be leading out. And it's coupling that with mentoring as well as training, as well as that great depth of relationship. So as that comes out, we can make that available as well. There's also a variety of resources around what we've called Faith Shaper, which is based on similar research to what's happened with Growing Young, but in the Australian region, where they've found that children are making the decisions very young as to whether or not they stay or leave.
Thanks so much for sharing, Kyle. That's awesome. Susanna, one of the core commitments of Growing Young is about being the best neighbours. And Susanna is our ADRA Director for Western Australia. Susanna, can you share, there's a couple of projects, ADRA projects, that are happening in local church. Are you able just to list those briefly for us?
Where do
There's
I
a lot.
start? There's a lot. I suppose we've got a number of churches doing community meals programs around from Rockingham up to Osborne Park, and in between we've got community pantries, we've got the community garden, and an extension of that in our community garden is the Work for the Doll program. So that's made a really good footprint into the community with that. We've had a lot of, for instance, Indigenous men, long-term unemployed, that have now got employment because of that. So it's impacted them and their families at a major level. We are looking at starting the DOORS program, which is the Disability Apprenticeship Scheme for school-aged kids that want to do an apprenticeship, again from the community garden as well. So they're really big, full-on impacts. But the community meals program is probably the one that really shapes across, because it's disadvantaged families, people that are lonely that just want to come in and mingle with other people. We've got homeless that come into that as well, and just your normal average families that just want to connect with their communities. So you've got, quite intergenerational through that program coming in, where church members can form really good friendships and be able to connect and see what the needs of their community really are. So there's quite a number of areas through that. And we've got other smaller projects. You don't have to be doing stuff that is once a week or whatever. It could be once a month or bi-monthly or whatever. It's not, that full-on commitment type stuff. And the good thing about it, anyone can do ADRA. Anyone can, doesn't matter what age you are, you can always contribute. So even in our community meals program, even though our thing is like 16 to 18, they need a parent and guardian to sign off and be there with them. Younger children, we don't sort of, because of the clientele that come in with some of our projects, we have to be really careful with our younger. But, they're doing stuff like doing prep work for the meals. They're doing stuff like packing toiletry packs and getting toiletries together for the homeless. So they're still involved, just at a different level. And that's service to them, and that's good building service into our youth and being a good neighbour.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Can I have a show of hands if anyone in this room knows of an ADRA type project that's happening at their church? Let's just have a show of hands. Wonderful. So there's lots of people in this building that you can learn from about their journey with ADRA projects at the moment. And Susanna, I love what you said about how while it may not be appropriate in some circumstances to have children involved in all aspects, there is always a way to get them involved. And I love what you said about the meal prep. That's super. We'll just pass on to Niku as well. Niku's got a mic. Awesome. Niku, we had the prayer summit was held towards the end of last year, and that was a really special way to host the first summit actually in this building, was about prayer. I'm wondering what you can share with us about how to develop a culture of prayer in our local churches.
Yeah, prayer is very important, and thanks for asking that question. Initially, when Lucy asked me to look at that question, she asked me to give some steps on developing a culture of prayer. And I wasn't sure about giving you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps, because it's not about that. It's depending on each church, each context. But perhaps Some of the principles that I will say works in every church is starting with ourselves. How is my relationship with God? How is my prayer life? Because all of us have an influence. You're here in this room because your personal influence in your church, and you're a key leader, and we can all have an impact on our circle of influence. So if my prayer life is, and everything that I do is the main focus of my life, if connecting with God, then I can influence that on somebody else. So team up with another person. I look at Jesus' ministry, the way he reflected and the way he, I guess, shaped a prayer life in his church, the disciples. He took 2 or 3 with him. And even though at first they fail and they fall asleep, and it'll be hard. It's not a tomorrow you're going to have a church that's going to be a shape for prayer and mission. It's going to take, it's a journey. So, but it all starts with ourselves, connecting, having somebody else that we team up with, and making everything that we do in our church, making prayer the main focus of everything. So, for example, I'm passionate about Sabbath School, and I believe Sabbath School it's a gift that's been given to us as a church. And the state of our Sabbath School, talking about the adult Sabbath schools, it's pretty devastating to me, because I look, when I travel across the conference, and I try to empower some of the Sabbath School teachers and facilitators with resources, and trying to use that time that we call Sabbath School, a time that it's a school of discipleship, rather than just we're just here to tell you the lesson for the week. A time when we can pray for each other. So talking about the culture of prayer, it starts there. It starts with the first thing that we come to church. How do we make our Sabbath School more relational? By praying for each other. Spend a few minutes actually caring for each other. Who is not here? We're talking about losing young people this weekend. But we're losing all types of people, all generations, not just young people. We're losing a lot of other people that we baptize, and the statistics are if in our Sabbath School we don't care for each other, we don't pray for each other, they're going to go back, through the back door. We need to close the back door. We have our front door, bringing them in, but we don't disciple them. And discipling means we care for each other, we love each other, we pray for each other. So starting with Sabbath School, I love what Amy just shared about Carmel and the idea with the bookmark, praying for somebody else. But that can be not just for the young people, it can be for everybody. If we just say, hey, and share those testimonies, the answers to prayers. When we share that, hey, I've been prayed for this week and I really had a bad week, but, that I felt that God really worked through my life, and you share that a few minutes in your church service. Use the time to actually make prayer the main thing. In Sabbath School, in mission, evangelism, discipleship, in the church service, and that comes from our own influence as leaders. And going back to our local churches, we all have a circle of influence. So culture of influence comes through ourselves and teaming up with somebody else.
Yeah, I resonate with a lot of what you've said, Niku, and we're going to come back to prayer in just a moment, actually. But I wanted to just see if you've noticed perhaps an intentional shift that I wanted to let you know about. I am a part of the WA Conference Executive Committee, as well as now being an employee, and I want you to know that there is a very intentional focus at the moment to make sure that the resources are at your local church. The local church is a focus of being empowered, and we really want to see local churches thrive. And that is our goal as a team. I'm going to pass to Willie now. Sorry, Niku, because we are short on time. But Willie's our youth youth director, and Willie and I are working really closely with each other. Willie is one of our coaches for Growing Together. You'll hear more about coaches in a little while, but Willie, I just want to see what sort of resources you've got there in your hand, but also I'm not sure if any of you are aware, last night a teen hangout was held, and 100 teens came to that event, which is... Whoa, 150 Jazz reckons. That's amazing. So one of the ways that the youth department, and you can expand on this, Willie, is working to empower local churches is some of the youth events around the conference are being hosted by local churches. So Livingston, Embrace Church, Carmel Church have been a part of that, especially with the teen hangouts. And that's really exciting. So yeah, Willie, I'll pass over to you for a little bit of your
Thank you, Lucy. Ooh, thank you, Lucy. Firstly, I just want to say how excited I am that you guys are here today. I am so excited and over the moon. And secondly, I just want to quote this. As I was coming up, Mike reminded me, you got to have a speech, because I had a speech the last time. So I want to do this very quickly. Only take a minute. It's a little thing that Robin Hood, if you watch Robin Hood, you'll get this, okay? So the king was challenging the people. He was a very I'm the king, you listen to me. Robin Hood was standing there and he put his hand up and he said, excuse me, king, can I say something? He said this, he said, if you're trying to build for the future, you must set your foundation strong. If you build a country like you build a cathedral from the ground up, empower every man and you will gain strength. If we want to build a church, we've got to build it from the ground up. Set our foundations right. So the youth ministry in WA, sorry, Lucy. Youth ministry in WA has built on what our predecessors have done, and we continue to build on. And we've made the local church the focus. So we follow and work on this inverted pyramid. We only exist to make sure that our local church are thriving. And one of the ways that we do that is that we want to come up with our own resources. So if you're looking for a mentoring resource, Amy and I worked hard at coming up with this. It took us a week. It's Mentor Mate. So that was a couple of years ago we came up with this resource because our focus was mentoring and small groups. And we want to build that within our local church. So if you want to know more about it, come and speak to us afterwards. We're also working on a resource at the moment, and we call it Soap Devotion. So it's on how to get you to make devotion time fun and easy, because sometimes we find it hard. Another resource that my good friend Kyle came up with, he didn't share today, was a prayer journal in his department. It's really good. So if you haven't got one, come and talk to Kyle. The other one that the AUC, actually the SBD have come up with, and we have the book in my hand, it's the World Changers. If you want to be a world changer, come and talk to us, because we have a program. I'm talking to Pastor Nick Cross, because he has a big idea behind this, and he'll be here to share it with us. But these are really good. It comes with guides as well, Bible study guide. Now, if you want a Bible, don't come and ask me if your church can have some, because there is a program that goes with it. There's an idea behind it. You get 2 Bibles. One is to give to somebody else that you're going to study with. So it's not for you to be sitting in your local church pews every Sabbath. So it's actually to go out and make a difference. So some of the ways that we've supported the local church. Recently, we had to move our youth rally to the afternoon, because what we found is that it's important for our local church to run what fits their context. So we said, okay, that's fair enough. We want to support you in that area. Also, in the last couple of years, we've developed regional coaches for our youth. So the youth leaders in your local church don't get burned out and can't talk to you. And this originated from one of our leaders and one of our biggest church approached me and he said, you know what? The only time I get called is when nominating is on. Do you want to be the youth leader? Okay, here, you be the youth leader. 12 months later, do you want to continue? So he didn't feel supported. So we came up with this idea of youth coaches that will be able to touch base with the youth leader and make sure that they're looked after. So as a conference as well, we're trying to go away from programs. Like I said, focus on local church. How can we empower the local church? So running away from programs. So we've downsized, and we thought to get the local churches involved, we'll bring the Chosen program from over east and run it here in WA. From that, Chosen here in WA, as well as the national-wide one, at the moment I can count, we have 4 pastors has already been graduated and already looking after churches from the Chosen program. That has made a big difference in their lives. And also, Lucy, I'll just finish up with this. Last year we thought that we won't be seen as running a lot of programs, so we'll cut back, and we came up with the Teen Hangout, where getting the churches involved. And we started last year with Carmel Church taking it on board, and it was a very good success. They had 80 kids last year, and now they've had 150 this year. Livingston was the other church that took it on board, and Embrace was the other church. So we have 4 of those running in a year. So the other one we haven't counted was the Easter Camp one. So other than that, that's how we support. There's more stuff coming through. We've restructured the way we do youth ministry. We're still working on that restructure at the moment with our youth advisory, because we want people to be involved and empowered so they can serve in the local church. And this year, if you want to help out, we've got the big WA State Camporee. So let me know if you want to give us a hand. But thank you, Lucy. Those are the little things that we are doing at the moment.
Thank you so much, guys. I'm glad that our live stream hasn't cut us off, actually, because it was great to hear from each of you. You'll notice a lot of us up here saying, this is in development, we're learning in this area. Each of us are on journeys, developing what's happening and learning how we can support local church better. So I just want to reiterate, we are all here for you to come and have a chat, to invite us to your table, and we look forward to developing some more relationships with you soon. Thank you so much, guys, for coming up. Now we are just on standby for our next live stream session to begin. We have about 10 minutes to go. Coming back to prayer, I'd love you to spend some of that 10 minutes now just in prayer at your tables, reflecting on some of the things perhaps that you've heard this morning, prayers over where you're headed in your conversations. So I just invite you now to spend some time in your teams for prayer, and we'll put the live stream on as soon as it's available again. Thank you.